couple of nights ago, President Trump announced his nominee to fill the vacancy that opened up on the Supreme Court when Justice Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement at the end of July. He put forward the name of Brett Kavanaugh, who by all accounts is a conservative justice. I know there are some conservatives who have some concerns about a couple of opinions that he's written in the past, but I think overall, when his opinions were scored, he shows as being probably the most conservative justice, assuming that he's approved, next to Clarence Thomas on the court, which should make most Trump supporters of President Trump, very happy. The reason this is timely is that you prophesied, or were shown rather, and is documented in the book, that there would be a number of opportunities for President Trump to appoint justices on the Supreme Court.
Correct.
So what were you given, and what do you see as still to come?
Originally, the Lord told me there was going to be 3 Supreme Court justices, and the Lord started dealing with me on it. And a little while later, he said, no, now there's going to be 5. And so I went back and started listening to the Lord. He said, 1 will die, 1 will retire, and 3 will be caught in a scandal.
Okay, now Antonin Scalia passed away.
It was like 3 months later, Anthony Scalia passed away. Mm-hmm. There was 1 still yet to retire.
And that was Anthony Kennedy.
That was Anthony Kennedy. That was this one. So now the next 3 remains to be seen as to what that typical scandal may be. Now, what that is, I don't know. When it comes about, I don't know. I don't have a timeline on that. But what the Lord is doing right now with the Supreme Court, he was telling me, is that I'm not moving the court left or right. He says, I'm moving it to righteousness. And what he was showing me in the original, that next prophecy where it talks about when Scalia had died, because at the time when Scalia died, there was a huge push. They were trying to get another Supreme Court justice in before Obama was out of office.
Right. Merrick Garland was the guy who was put forward.
Sure.
And I know that conservatives have had a lot of criticism of Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, who's the Senate Majority Leader. Mm-hmm. He's not been very supportive of President Trump on all issues, but to his credit, he did hold up a vote on Merrick Garland until after the presidential election.
Correct. And that, one of the things, if you go back to Anthony Scalia's funeral, when they were carrying his body up the steps to, I believe it was the courthouse or whatever it was, there was 2 signs that were given by God that this was not going to happen. And that's when I prophesied and said, because we had about an 8-month window there that they could have put another justice in. Mm-hmm. And the entire country was in full-blown panic at that point. And that's when I came out with the other prophecy, and the Lord said, no, it will not happen. This is being reserved for Donald Trump. So the day that Donald Trump got sworn in, that part of the prophecy came to pass. Mm-hmm. But the 2 signs that were given, if you listen to, everybody was looking for the sign. Sometimes God, when he speaks, he's not looking. You may have to be listening for what he's saying, right?
Right.
There was a siren in the background because there was a reference there. There was a very quiet where it was there. And there was a siren in the background at the bottom of the steps. Well, at the top of the steps, when they got to the top of the steps, the siren fades away, and all of a sudden you hear this enormous train horn. And what the Lord was saying was, don't fear, America. Help is on the way, the siren. This has been reserved for my anointed Trump from the Trump train.
Gotcha.
So that's just the way God speaks to me, you know what I mean? God can't have a sense of humor.
Sure.
So he was showing America that, look, this is going to be reserved for Donald Trump. There will be 5 coming. And when God reforms the court, Roe versus Wade will be overturned. Mm-hmm. Now, when they approach that, I don't know. Now, I know that particular thing, timing will be a critical issue because, even though we now have 2 new judges, 1 more coming here, that may not still be the time to approach Roe versus Wade. It may be after the midterms. It could be once we get the next 3 in so that we make sure that when it does, it goes through without a hitch, so to speak. So it could be a timing issue, but these are all things that we need to be praying about right now, that the Lord will pick, or not the Lord, but Donald Trump will pick the right Supreme Court justices, for if this scandal does take place, whatever it is, that it be revealed and that, these guys be held accountable, period.
Yeah.
And the other thing, one more thing I want to point out on that is that because I was on another show on the record telling people, say, look, there could be some civil unrest for some of the stuff that's coming, whether it's the arrests that are coming for the indictments. But think about this for a minute. Look at the upheaval we're having with 1 Supreme Court justice.
Right.
And they know Roe versus Wade is on the line. And we talked about this in another program where Roe versus Wade is the food source by which empowers bail. And they know this, okay? So they don't want that.
Institutionalized infant sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Of preborn children.
Absolutely.
We turned it almost into an assembly line here in the United States.
Absolutely. So they don't want that taken away because they know it empowers their God called Baal. So the fight is on for that. So now, all of a sudden, if you find out that 3 Supreme Court justices have been caught in a scandal and are about to be removed, we need to be praying for that, because there could be major upheaval as far as in this country as that. So we can mitigate that. I'm not saying that there's going to be civil war. It's not going to be anything like that. But there could be some civil unrest in places that, we need to be praying about and keep that at bay.
Right. Now, setting aside the scandal, because this would be something that would be, I think, and I've not researched this, but I can't bring to mind a scandal that's affected the Supreme Court in the entire history of the United States. Now, I could be wrong about that, but there's nothing that has happened, at least in my lifetime. But I think just Roe versus Wade being considered by the Supreme Court with the current makeup, assuming, again, that Judge Kavanaugh is approved, and it looks like he will be, and again, Senator McConnell is probably going to push this through, even though the Republicans, with John McCain, Senator McCain, being unavailable now due to his what appears to be terminal illness, the Republicans hold a very slim 50-49 advantage in the Senate. That will still get, assuming that there aren't any defections from either party, that will probably still be enough to get Judge Kavanaugh approved. If Roe versus Wade, and it's more likely when Roe versus Wade is revisited, there is likely to be a lot of social unrest over this, because you're right, this is affecting it's more than just about the right to choose or reproductive health. This is a supernatural, spiritual thing. I think what Christians need to understand, I think what everybody needs to understand, frankly, is what Roe v. Wade actually does. It essentially found in the Constitution, apparently in invisible ink, because even I've talked to some attorneys who are pro-abortion who admit that it was a bad decision, because the Constitution as it's written does not guarantee a right to privacy that you can then use to justify the stilling of a heart, a beating heart. However, overturning Roe versus Wade does not mean that abortion will suddenly be illegal in all 50 United States.
Correct.
What it does mean is that then the states would have the power to decide for themselves, and there are certainly states in the Union where abortion would continue to be legal.
Correct.
And might even become more legal than we would like. So what this would then give Christians an opportunity to do is say, now look, here is why this is wrong. Scripturally, this is why this is wrong. And beyond that, Christians in the pews and you know, non-believers, because we need to do some preaching outside the choir. This is why we know the Word of God is true. This is how we know it's inspired. This is how we know the Bible hasn't been tampered with, that the words inside the covers of the Bible have not been tinkered with through the centuries. We have a window of opportunity here.
And
to do what we've been called to do, which is make disciples.
Absolutely. But going back, this is going to be a war on spiritual level that we haven't seen in a long time. And we're seeing it already taking place with just taking down the cabal, the globalists, the corruption, this, that, and the other. But what people have to understand is that when a Democrat or even a Republican who's pro-choice, they're not for your right to choose. They're not for women's health. You are being duped. You are being deceived. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has everything to do with getting them for you to abort that child, because it is a sacrifice. Every time the baby's aborted, they know it's a sacrifice unto their God called Baal, and it empowers that entity, that strong man over America called Baal. That's the part they don't want broken. Now, the other thing I want to point out to people is that there are resignations taking place on a massive scale. Those who say they're not running for Congress again. So what we've also got now, the last number I saw was 40,000 indictments right now, sealed indictments right now. So the corruption's coming to an end. But there's, and if you'll notice, Kennedy was the swing vote. So what I want people to understand is that there may be a scandal on the Supreme Court, but we may never hear it.
True.
It could be that they, all of a sudden, they're just retiring out, and they're giving the option to walk. Because, again, it will look like that they're trying to instill 3 different Supreme Court justices, in which case we'd have this upheaval. So keep an eye on that. So he was the swing vote. Now, here's the other thing, too, that people want to keep in mind is that think about some of these people who have been on the Supreme Court. They know now, once this judge has been confirmed, it's over. Roe versus Wade's coming. They know it. And there could be some judges that don't want to be a part of it, because if they are a part of overturning Roe versus Wade, their life will never be the same.
That's very true.
Unfortunately.
That's very
so
true.
That's the other thing we got to watch for. So watch for the resignations, or more so the retirements that they mask as retirement, but there
Gotcha.
could be a scandal behind the scenes
Gotcha.
that nobody's releasing.
Yeah, there's a sense, I think, among those in power that the institution must be protected at all costs.
Right.
We see it in the way the Vatican has dealt with the pedophile priest scandal.
Sure.
We have to keep this quiet and under the rug because the church,
Right.
we need to represent, and the same may hold true
Same is
with the
holding
government
true
of
to
the
that.
United States.
Yep.
We can't let the Supreme Court be
Right.
tainted by scandals. So just go off and retire quietly, and that's a very good. Here's the other possibility. It could be that some of the justices who've been more conservative would be ones who would be retiring out.
Anything's possible. I don't know where God's going to go with this. I just know the end result is going to be that he's moving the court towards righteousness. And there's more than Roe versus Wade that hangs in the balance. Roe versus Wade is the biggest one, probably.
Sure.
But you've also got the Second Amendment stuff. I mean, you've got all kinds of things that are hanging in the balance. And there is, believe it or not, there is corruption on that court. And God's going to expose it.
Wherever
he's dealing with corruption, and he's exposing it, and he's bringing it down.
Wherever there are humans, there's corruption. There's no question about that. Well, it may sound implausible, but certainly not any more implausible than saying President Donald Trump just 2 years ago here in the United States. Mark Taylor, the man behind the Trump prophecies, and the movie coming out August 2nd and 4th, The Trump Prophecy, singular. It will be in theaters across the country. I know that here in the Springfield, Missouri area, we've got one of the larger theaters will be showing it on those dates. You can find out where it will be near you at fathomevents.com, fathomevents.com. Do a search for The Trump Prophecy, and you'll be able to see it when it's out. It tells the story of Mark's experiences as a first responder firefighter, his burnout, and then the remarkable messages that have thus far proven true. Mark, always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And we thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is 5 in 10 from Skywatch TV.